Hey there, YouTube. So today I'm actually touring and giving you guys sort of an overview on the 2018 Hyundai Kona. This is actually my rental car for the next couple hours, as my Elantra already is apparently done. So basically, I'm just going to go pick it up, but I wanted to go ahead and give you guys sort of a synopsis on how this car behaves. It actually is quite a fun car. I've only driven it maybe once or twice since I went home first, and I'm gonna go run some errands real quick before I come back. But basically, it is not too bad. I can't complain about it. I mean, granted, would I want this car long term? Maybe not. But it's actually a pretty comfortable drive. And ultimately, the only thing I noticed between this and the Elantra was that the Kona is not as quiet in terms of its road noise and in terms of its engine drone. Hyundai's 2.0 liter, although it's a good engine compared to the 1.8 and 2.4s, it has a little bit of a drone going up into the higher RPMs, and I don't really notice it too much on my Elantra, but on this car it's definitely there. So it is a little bit different for me. However, it's not too bad in terms of its handling characteristics and such. I do love the leather wrapped steering wheel compared to my grainy plastic steering wheel, so that's something to look forward to. But then again too, I have a steering wheel cover on mine just to avoid that problem altogether. But basically with that, now I'm actually just going to give you guys sort of like an overview on how the car drives. It does tend to drive a little bit like an SUV, but it has mostly a car platform. And the only reason why I say SUV is because there's an attempt to make it bigger than it really is. And it's not too noticeable. However, it's one of those things where if you don't really think about it, you're gonna be like, oh, I'm just driving a normal car. But at the same time, with the kind of the way it handles more like it wants to be on a truck platform. So that's definitely something I did notice, and it's something that kind of threw me in for a loop because this car is not even classified as an SUV, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of like, why? You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's kind of a joke, but at the same time, I can see why they were trying to do it, because this is ultimately a car that a college student is going to buy. If you take a look, the interior is actually pretty cheap in terms of its design, and you notice that everything is circular and kind of young looking. I think that is what the Kona is trying to go toward. I think it's trying to go towards those who are a little bit on a budget, but at the same time, they are, you know, wanting to get a new vehicle. Let's say, you know, they graduated college. This would be the kind of vehicle for them. So ultimately, the car is going to feel cheap in terms of its interior because they're trying to keep the cost down. You got your little circular vents here that remind me of a little Dodge Nitro. But you didn't lack the blind spot monitoring, nor did you lack the traction control. So basically, you're getting the same things that you would if you were to get an Elantra, only it would look more like a sort of SUV looking thing. But as you can see here, the interior door panel is very basic. You do have your little handle here that's kind of hidden, and you have auto up and down on both the driver and passenger side doors. Your infotainment system is actually pretty basic as well. It does have the touchscreen. However, if you notice, it's set up like a computer versus being built into the system down here, where you will see it on my Elantra as well as the Sonata. The air conditioner controls are very basic, and as you can see here, I can connect to Apple CarPlay, but there is only one USB port with two 12-volt power outlets. Now, the gearbox is still a 6-speed gearbox. It does behave rather nice. It's not too firm or soft in its shifting. It's actually pretty right where it needs to be. I did notice, though, that I only have normal and sport mode. I actually don't have eco, which is something that kind of threw me off guard, because if you really think about it, even with this type of vehicle, eco mode should be an option. Now, do keep in mind, it is aggressive to shift into those upper gears, so it's not necessarily something that would be affected, but it's just weird that I would only have sport and normal mode and no eco, so that kind of threw me in for a loop. Is it fast by any means? Absolutely not. This vehicle is not as fast as that EcoBoost engine in the Ford, which was an EcoBoost engine and not a V8. I am so sorry. But basically, it definitely gets out of its own way when you need it to, and the transmission, as you can see, shifts pretty nicely. It's pretty firm compared to the older Hyundais, which were a little bit slower to shift up. So definitely nice there. The engine is responsive. I did mention that it was slow, but if I really needed to downshift or if I needed to get somewhere, I would go hard throttle, but there's someone standing in the middle of the street, so I'm not sure how this is exactly gonna work. Okay, he moved over. So if I were to go hard throttle and needed some response, not too bad. The acceleration's not horrible. I mean, it's definitely not the fastest by any means, but it's enough to get itself out of its own way. And that's kind of how my Elantra behaves, just due to the fact that they have the same engine. But I noticed that the transmission on this one is, like I said, a little bit firmer. But as you can see, everything's pretty hunky-dory. The car only has 197 miles on it, so this poor engine's already being revved out. It's okay though, that's why you make rentals. So that's pretty much it there. But yeah, it's kind of like a, I guess you could say, I want to describe this car as like a teenager's sort of college student's get me going car, just because it's so basic in terms of its features, but it's actually kind of hip. It kind of reminds me of the Nissan Altimas that came out in like '02. Like, if you guys notice, the first Altimas were like shit compared to the second ones, but then the second ones ended up being shit because Renault bought them. So I'm just saying, it's kind of like that same feature, but this is actually kind of nice. Like, I actually do kind of like this car, so it's definitely something to think about when you're purchasing. Like I said, it does tend to drive a little bit bigger than what it actually is, so you're gonna feel higher, but really in reality it's still on a car platform. But yeah, as you can see, this is kind of the whole car. The back seats are pretty roomy in my opinion, but then again too, it may not be roomy for those of you guys who maybe have bigger legs. When I do my interior review, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about, because basically, although it's sort of like an SUV looking thing, it's not necessarily going to be anything special. It's actually pretty basic, but it's just kind of fun to drive, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's thoroughly giving me some enjoyment, even though I'm not even driving it spiritedly. I'm just like, okay, this is nice. But at the same time, I think I would get tired of it pretty quickly, because it will start aging for sure. All right, here we go. So again, another hard acceleration. We'll kick down to first. You know what's funny is I really like these 6-speeds. Like, that's one thing I'll give Hyundai, is that the 6-speed gearbox is just awesome. Like, the gears are not too far apart, but at the same time they're not too close together. And ultimately, even though they do ride a little bit higher on the highway, that feature now that caused them to ride higher on the highway is actually good, because I noticed that it's not downshifting as much. The previous models with the 6-speed, I think, were geared a little too tall, so they would downshift, and ultimately would just be kind of a pain in the ass, because you kind of felt yourself at high RPMs no matter what anyway. So the fact that it can now be in 5th and ultimately climb a hill is definitely pretty cool. But as you can see here, we'll do a back seat tour. It's not huge, but at the same time, it's not horrible. So when I do the interior review, I'll show you guys kind of what I'm talking about there. But basically, guys, these are my first driving impressions. Do I like the car? Yeah, I kind of do, actually. So let's go ahead and talk about it when we ultimately get to the interior review. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go, and we will go ahead and reconvene in the next video. Have a good one.